year has been a focused celebration of him as a result of his untimely death, which has been a great pain to all of us. I know you as well in the audience have missed him greatly. He has such a broad impact and connection with so many people. And I often think about that. And of course, the David C. Driskell Center, established in 2001, it was there, it is created to celebrate that legacy, his history, his practice, and his creativity. And as a teacher, that was at the foundation of his practice, because David believed that it was important to transfer this message and information to the next generation as it was passed on to him. Many of you know of his history, his studying at Howard University, studying with such luminaries as James Porter, James Wales, Lois Mailou Jones. All of them were committed to passing on their legacy to the next generation. And David was a recipient of that. So he was a walking historical text. And of course, we all appreciate what he did with his seminal show of 2 Centuries, which has been the subject matter of a current film produced by HBO on Black art that you can go to hbo.com and look at that as being streamed live. But that exhibition was not only about showing artists of African American descent, and as David stated, to many of the challengers and critics of the exhibition, the question he raised, would you have known about these artists if this show didn't exist? And of course, the answer is no. But more importantly, what David was doing was transferring a legacy as a teacher that was central to his mission. And we don't often talk about the influences of individuals in our lives. David was impacted by many important artists, and he became someone that was influencing other generations, both art historians and visual artists. So we're fortunate this evening to have a chance to look at an exhibition, a virtual exhibition of some of his students, over 30 of his students, which is a celebration and a recognition of David's great importance and great affection. I often think about David, and I try to find a simplistic kind of way of encapsulating his significance. And I think what it was is that he so believed in the transcendent nature of creativity that it can expand our humanity and heal our wounds that we suffered in society. I believe that was at the foundation of his personality. And all that he created, all that he pursued as a scholar emanated from that source. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Dorit Yaron, who's done a wonderful job of organizing this. And of course, our staff support, Aaron and David, our archivists, who make this all possible. Dorit, take us through the show.
Okay, thank you, Curly. Again, our apology for the delay. And good evening, and thank all of you, the 200 people and more who RSVP and those who are here with us tonight. As many of you know, David Driskell was a teacher and mentor in his soul. David started taking classes at Howard University in 1949 and officially enrolled as a student in 1950, planning to study history and become a history teacher. Later on, after taking a few art classes, he changed his major to art and took art history classes as well. And as we know, the rest is history. David was a unique teacher and professor. And although I knew him for more than 22 years, I did not study with him or knew him in that capacity. But as a co-curator of this exhibition, working with more than 30 of Driskell's students, shown me that the influence of David had on his students and those he mentored was just amazing. His inspiration on his students went beyond that which comes from being an art or art history professor. He also inspired them as a human being and created friendships that lasted a lifetime. We will hear directly from David art and art history students later this semester, so please stay tuned. Tonight, though, I would like to give a quick tour of the exhibition, similar to what we would have done in the actual space if we were there. After my talk, we will ask our graduate student, Aaron, who designed the website, to demonstrate how to navigate this exhibition. Unfortunately, we do not have time to highlight the work of each of the participating artists. I would like to take the opportunity to thank each one of them for working with us and supporting this project. The idea of curating this exhibition was discussed for quite some time. It was something that David looked forward to, and we are devastated that he's not here with us to hear the kind words so many students have to say about him, as well as to enjoy this wonderful exhibition. After David passed away on April 1st, 2020 for complication of COVID-19, the Driskell Center decided to devote the 2021 academic year to highlight his archive, which he collected for 5 decades, in an exhibition that we presented last semester, and the work of his students this semester. We started by contacting 15 students, and through word of mouth, within a few months, we learned about more and more students, and the list grew to include about 35 students. Of course, there are many more artists who studied with David. However, to clarify, all the students we contacted are those whose art continues to play a major role in their professional careers and life. When we developed the exhibition, we hoped to curate an exhibition in the center gallery. We asked the artists to submit 3 works for review, and we selected 1 or 2 works from each. When it was clear that we would not be able to open the Driskell Center to the public, we changed the exhibition to a virtual exhibition only. Thus, the term curate is used loosely here. We included most of the submitted works and focused on included additional information about each artist, such as a short biography, explanation about the selected works, and memories of David Driskell. Thus, this exhibition became what we were hoping for, a tribute to David as a teacher and mentor. For the gallery tour today, I selected several artists who studied with David in different institutions and different time periods. And though the virtual exhibition is organized in alphabetical order of the artist's last name, I will highlight the selected artists based on where they studied with David. Where are David's students today? So many of them are successful practicing artists. Others have thriving academic career, and some have both. For the tour today, we will try to highlight some of the known artists, some of who are less known, but whose art career and memories of David should be mentioned. The first academic position held by David Driskell was an assistant professor of art at Talladega College, Alabama, where he taught from 1955 through 1966. At Talladega, he taught the traditional classes of painting, drawings, and printing, but also art history, ceramic, and even art education. Unfortunately, most of the material in David's archive from before 1964 was lost. We know that a few of his students from Talladega went into MFA programs, but we don't know who they are, and we're not able to include any student from that period. Therefore, I will start with students who studied with David at Howard University, where David was an associate professor of art from 1962 until 1966. The first artist I will focus on is Sofia Daramboka, a student who came from Greece to Howard University in 1961. She was hoping that Greek life or sorority at Howard meant that there are a lot of students from Greece. Well, even though she returned to Greece, she remembered David fondly and kept in touch with him over the years as she became an award-winning children's book illustrator. In 2013, I gave a talk about David Driskell and his influence on the field of American art and African-American art in particular at the International Conference on Visual and Performing Arts in Athens. David decided to attend the conference as well and asked me to find his beloved student, Sophia. And I did. On her balcony, looking at the Acropolis, we had dinner together and we celebrated David's 82nd birthday. In her notes about her experience, and I'm asking my student, can you please show her work first, please? Okay, so we are now looking at 3 works from the books that Sophia had published. And while I'm speaking, Aaron, our student, will just highlight each one of them and show you more details of that. And after she showed that, I would like to talk a little bit about life in early 1960s at Washington, D.C. So you can see the images from her books. In her notes about her experience at Howard, Sophia noted that she was probably among the first students David taught at Howard in early 1960. And she was right, it was his first job at Howard. And I quote what she said. She thought that because he was so young. She also remembers the 1963 historic march of August 28, 1963, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. The march left a huge impression on Sophia, who drew the demonstration as you can see here. So Aaron, can we see the drawing, please? And as you can see, the drawing on top is a drawing that Sophia made in 1963. And below that, you can see a picture of David Driskell. I think Curly Holton is there, and Glee Holton, and myself with Sophia celebrating David's 82nd birthday. The next artist who also studied with David in the early 60s at Howard and who became a friend and colleague is Lou Stovall. He's best known for his circular prints of flowers and landscapes following flowing streams and trees. Many of you, included myself, know Lou and his amazing work as an artist and printmaker who worked with many well-known artists such as Sam Gilliam, Elizabeth Catlett, Lois Melio Jones, and Jacob Lawrence, among many others. And though I'm familiar with his work, the center has about 10 works in its collection. I had never seen drawings by Lou Stovall before this show. Thanks to his wife, Dee, who shared the images of his drawing with us. She also mentioned that Lou doesn't show his drawings very often, even though his passion remained drawing. The three works, the drawing, a print, and a collage that you just saw, that he submitted for this show are all inspired by nature and are testament to his skills as an artist and a master printmaker. The last artist who studied with David at Howard University, whom we'll highlight tonight, is Stephanie Pogge. The reason I selected her work is not only for its beauty, but also because she was David's student who later became his colleague at both Fisk University and at University of Maryland. Stephanie arrived to Howard University where she studied with Professor James Porter, Lois Melio Jones, James Wells, and Lila Asher, meaning she studied with the same professor that David studies with 10 years earlier. She then taught at the Department of Art at Fisk University, and later in 1981, she was hired by David as a professor at Maryland, the Department of Art. Unfortunately, Stephanie passed away in 2002. In 2008, the center presented Arabesque, the art of Stephanie Pogge, an exhibition curated by then the center curator in residence, Dr. Adrian Childs. Stephanie prints are inspired from her traveling, including to India. She had a strong sense of color and used simple geometric shapes. In Aaron Meadows, the work we are seeing now, she pays homage to Aaron Douglas by combining an imagery of peaceful meadow with images from, this is a piece, I'm sorry, with images from Douglas' own stylistic vocabulary, creating a sense of intimacy. In this work and many others, she masters the techniques of color viscosity etching, a technique developed in the 1950s of printing multiple colors of inks from a single plate and demonstrating her ability to push the traditional boundaries of printmaking. Her work in this exhibition are from the David C. Driskell Art Collection, which has 13 of her works. Moving on to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, where David was a professor of art and chairman of the Department of Art from 1966 to 1977, we will start with the artist Adrian Patel. Adrian is an artist working with painting, drawing, ceramics, and mixed media. She has a strong connection to raising awareness of African American heritage and often explores space and spirit by using organic shapes, vibrant colors, and bold texture. Adrienne shared with us not only her beautiful works, but a wonderful note, and Erin will show you the note in a minute, that David wrote to her, and which you can see here, and it reads in part, and I think you will be able to kind of imagine hearing David's voice here. Adrian, my friend, you must excuse my neglect at visiting. I am awful, 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 and we miss you much, much, much. Paint until your life is new, until your life sings, until form makes no shape at all. Paint as though your love is. This you can do. This you will do. Art is the right reason for making the things which need to be made. And he signed DCD, the teacher. The next artist we will talk about who studied with David at Fisk University is Gloria Brown Simmons. Gloria is an artist and aesthetic engineer who studied at Fisk University with, and please pay attention to the list of professors, David Driskell painting, Walter Williams painting, Earl Hooks ceramics, Keith Morrison 2 and 3-dimensional design, Martin Poirier sculpture, and Carlton Moss video and film. Her work is abstract and she uses mixed media video installation among others. I was touched when reading about her last encounter with David, and it reminded me of how gardening was so important in his life. She wrote, I traveled to visit David at his home in Falmouth, Maine during the early 2010s. It was a beautiful day, and I remember walking around and listening to his talk about the plants and seeing his paintings. As the daylight began to fade, we went inside and David made a salad from greens he had picked in his garden, and then we settled in for our discussion. That sounds so much like David. John Simmons is the last artist who studies with David at Fisk University, whom I will highlight in this section. John walked tall in spite of it all work is a mixed media work with a strong political statement, and Erin will show it to us in a minute. As you can see, the work includes collage of slaves and families, drawing of slaves reminiscent of the Middle Passage slave ships. But we can also see the sun rises in the background. John wrote that, and I quote, Mr. D, as John called David, always wanted me to show my collages. So again, we see an example of how David encouraged and influenced his students in the direction that they are taking in their art. I think it's a beautiful piece and I really love it, would love to see it in person. At this point, I would like to move on to talk about a few of David's students at University of Maryland. David was a professor of art at the Department of Art at Maryland from 1977 until his retirement at 1998, serving as a professor and chairman from 1978 to 1983. Before his retirement, David was awarded a Distinguished Professor of Art by the university president at the time, Dr. Mott. Under Mott's leadership, the Driskell Center was founded in 2001. The first student I will mention is a local artist who many of you are familiar with, Preston Sampson. Preston, whom I've known and worked with since 2001, is a good friend of the Driskell Center. In fact, the Driskell Center has about 15 works by Preston in its art collection. Preston graduated from the Department of Art at the University of Maryland in 1984 and has always talked warmly about David. Among the 3 works Preston submitted is Langston Blues, which he made in 2006. It is a reference to Langston Hughes and using Preston words, and I quote, a symbol of historical culture awareness that I always associated with Dr. Driskell. I feel he awakened me to the power of words and images, close quote. I also want to point out the unique technique that Preston uses called pulp painting, a process that uses pigment paper pulp as a painting medium, which is then applied on a handmade paper. It allows to create a unique texture and organic shapes. Another artist who graduated from University of Maryland is Gail Shaw Clemons, who received her MFA in 1979. At UMD, she studied with Professor David Driskell and Martin Poirier. Gail herself is currently an adjunct professor at Bowie State University. I wanted to share her work for 2 reasons. First, the work she submitted are black and white, which is unusual in this group of works, and it include very unique detail. I'm especially taken by African mask number 6, where you can see the unique layering of detailed images of African mask. As you may know, David was inspired by African mask as well, and included them in many of his work. As a matter of fact, I believe, and Curly can add to that a little bit later, that some of his latest prints have been about African mask. I also wanted to share that Gail studied both art and art history with David, and using her own words, and I quote, I studied African history and African American art history from Dr. Driskell at the University of Maryland in the 1970s. It was the first time studying Black history. And this is so important because here we see how important David was in reshaping the narrative taught in American art history classes by including works by African American artists who have not been acknowledged before. I will now move to works by Emily Conover, who studied with David at UMD just before he retired. Emily, who got her MFA from Maryland, has been teaching painting and drawing at the University of Maryland since 1999. I wanted to share Emily's beautiful and dynamic abstract painting. Though Emily's art is very different than that of David, she's sharing a common link to David by teaching the next generation at the same institute where David taught. Emily wrote about David as a teacher, and I quote, I was privileged to study under thoughtful direction of Professor David C. Driskell. David was an influential artist, mentor, and scholar. He inspired my exploration of mixed media, social commentary, and other forms of art making. David became a good friend and supportive colleague throughout my continuing career as an artist and professor in the Department of Art. And I'm sorry, I have to take a drink of water before I continue. As we are creating the need, as we are reaching the end of the tour, I would like to mention 2 more artists who viewed David as their mentor. The first one is Jefferson Pinder, whose video works are included in the exhibition, but due to time constraint, I will not talk about them or show them tonight. Jefferson is a graduate of University of Maryland who also taught at the Department of Art before accepting an academic position at the Art Institute of Chicago. Jefferson was not a traditional student of David's, but rather a Driskell Fellow from the Department of Art in the David C. Driskell Center, who worked with David at his studio and became what I would describe as David's protege. I encourage all of you to spend time with these 3 striking videos, which, as typical to Jefferson's work, include political and social messages. As Jefferson described, and I quote again, I create performances, video work, and objects that challenge viewers to think critically about our highly polarized society. And finally, I would like to conclude my talk with one work by by Sean Leonardo titled David, and in parentheses, Dr. Driskell, which he created after David passed away. The work, which is an enlarged depiction of David's hands, is a tribute to David as an artist and mentor. Sean met David at Bowdoin College and looked up to David as his mentor. And Sean wrote this beautiful tribute to David, and I'm quoting, "To this day, it's not that easy to look out in the world and find a Black male mentor. Driskell resembled the kind of person that I could look to or attempt to be in his composure, in his scholarship, and in his kindness. To have someone like that in the art world is immeasurable. The broader art world does not quite understand that type of mentorship, particularly when it comes to Black masculinities." I think this is a great quote which highlights so many of David's qualities as a person, as an artist, a friend, a teacher, and a mentor. At this time, I will ask our graduate student, Erin, to demonstrate how to navigate through the website. So when you visit the exhibition on your own, you will be able to get the maximum information and enjoyment from the work of those talented and inspiring artists. Thank you. And I would like again to take this opportunity to thank Erin, because I work with the artist directly, collected all the information, but she created this really gorgeous website and made it enjoyable and I think relatively easy to navigate. It's something that we still learn how to use or how to make exhibitions online most enjoyable. And I appreciate all the work that she has done to make it happen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Erin Newrock Schreiner, the Graduate Assistant for the Driskell Center. As the virtual designer of this exhibition, I'm happy to share this tour with you guys. I'm also the person who has been sending you emails, and so I very much appreciate your patience and with all of the craziness, what seems like a Murphy's Law of technical difficulties tonight. I just very much appreciate you being here and being just so gracious. So as we move through the exhibition, as I move through this tour, I'd like to note that this exhibition is accessible in a number of ways. So this here is the main page of the Driskell Center. When you are landing on this main page, you can see that there is a link to the press release, which is viewable here. You can click here to read more. The press release will lay out all of the basic information about the exhibition. There is also a link to the exhibition here. If that's not what you want, you can go directly from the main page, just scroll down a little bit, and you can see that there is a section, a block that says David C. Driskell Students View the Exhibition, and you can just follow the direct link to the main page. I would also like to note that the links to the exhibition are sent out through our weekly emails. And if you haven't already, please sign up for the mailing list. You can sign up by clicking the menu button up here. And then you click here where it says mailing list and you input your information and you receive the weekly, sometimes more frequently than weekly emails from the Driskell Center so you can stay abreast of all of the happenings. So once you arrived at the exhibition main page, you can see that we begin with an introduction to Professor Driskell's long career as a teacher and a mentor. While this exhibition focuses on select students and mentees, if you're curious about the full scope of Professor Driskell's career, you can click here where it says this web page. This will open up a new web page with Professor Driskell's full CV. I won't go through this, but I will mention that because it opens up in a new tab, you can simply close the tab to return to the exhibition. Following this brief introduction to Professor Driskell's career, you will find a button linking you to the press release, which you can explore if it strikes your fancy. This red block here is meant to capture your attention before moving on to explore the artists. It contains navigation instructions, which I will be detailing in a moment, as well as a short disclaimer. The exhibition presents biographical information about the artists, and in most cases, artists provided their own bios, while a few others were compiled by the Driskell Center. Additionally, all images, reminiscings, and quotes in this exhibition come directly from the artists themselves. Anything in quotation marks are exact phrasings from the artists and were only edited for minor spelling and grammar mistakes. You may see that some artists are missing reminiscings or biographies. In those cases, the artist simply chose not to submit that information. Let's begin the tour, shall we? Each of the artists featured in David C. Driskell Students has a tab dedicated especially to them. Artists are organized in alphabetical order, as I'm sure that you've seen already. 4 to 5 artists are in each block of tabs. So to view the full range of artists, you simply scroll down the page. To make navigation easier, the first tab in each block lists the block's artists and an image of Professor Driskell at work. So we're going to take a look at a specific artist for an example. This was someone who was not highlighted in Dorit's previous comments. We're going to look at Beverly Paul's page. To view her work, I'll click on her name, and you can see that Beverly Paul provided a memory of her time as a student and is a lifelong friend of Professor Driskell, and she mentions a sweet Christmas meal with the Driskell family. Beverly also shared an image of a note Professor Driskell wrote to her, congratulating her on her show, This Little Light of Mine, in the West Gallery. I won't spoil anything for you, so I'll leave you to read her memory more in depth on your own. Below her memories are a list of artworks Beverly shared with us and a brief biography. To see Beverly's art, I will click here where it says View Album of Artwork here. This will open up a new tab, as you've noticed, which is a Flickr album dedicated to her artwork. I can see all of her work that she submitted laid out here. To see the work up close, you click on its image. Here, you will find the artwork's title, the year, the medium, the size, and if the artist provided one, a brief explanation for why the artist submitted this work to the exhibition. We chose Flickr because of the zoom ability. So if you would like to see the artwork up close, you can simply click on it and you can get very close to them. In some cases, you can actually see individual brushstrokes of the artist's work. To zoom out, you simply click on it again. You can view Beverly's other works by clicking on the right and left arrows. And again, you can simply scroll down the page to see the basic information about the artwork and then the reason that the artist has submitted or chosen this work. Each artist tab, in order to get back to the main page, you simply close the Flickr window and continue exploring the exhibition. Each artist tab is formatted in a similar way, and I hope that you find it easy and intuitive to navigate. Remember that there are brief instructions in the red block at the top of the page. And I want to thank you for taking the time to follow along in this tour, and I hope that you enjoy the exhibition. We'll go back to Dorit now for some Q&A.
Thank you, Erin. That was very helpful. I hope that everybody understand and will enjoy that. I don't know if there are any questions, but I would like to first just mention a few more events that we are planning that you would have the opportunity to ask the artist a few questions. Our first event is February 25th at 6 p.m. We would have several artists who studied with David Driskell at Howard University, as well as at Fisk University. We have a conversation with them. And then on March 25th, also at 6 p.m., we're going to have an event with students who studied with David art, as well as art history at University of Maryland. And you will have the opportunity to ask questions of them as well. Hopefully we will not have any issues to log in at the time. Curly, do you have any, oh, and one more thing, I'm sorry. We're going to have this recorded event on our website. We'll send you a link. So if you want to listen to it again, or if you want to share it with your friends, we really appreciate that. It will be available on our website, so people who were not able to log in today because of technical issues will be able to listen to that or attend. Any other information? I don't think we have any questions, and I know that people are looking forward to explore it on their own. But Curly, would you like to add anything about this exhibition or about our
I should say
future?
that it's a fantastic exhibition, and it builds on the previous exhibition about the David Driskell papers in the archive. And again, I think it's another aspect of David's achievement as a teacher and as a humanist. And the other thing that is, and I mentioned this earlier, this notion of influence, how that influence of an individual and how we share these influences and how they continue to build on the legacy and enrich the legacy. So I think the work of these students and their commitment to their careers and their success and passion only indicates that David nourished that plant and it grew to its full potential. And he was a gardener, not just with vegetables and other kinds of things in his garden, but he was a gardener of people as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And just before we say goodbye, I would like to mention that the exhibition that our archivist David Conway curated of the David Driskell papers is still online. You can go to our website to past exhibition and see the archive exhibition that we did last semester, as well as some other exhibitions such as David Driskell trees and previous exhibitions that we have done before. Other than that, we are glad that you were able to join us tonight. We really hope to see you in the future, in the next events. And my understanding from a recent email that we received from the university president, we are hoping that the university will go back to kind of normal activities in the fall. So stay tuned. We have a wonderful exhibition of American landscape, which will be fantastic. It's a fantastic exhibition. We'll send additional information, but hopefully we will be able to see you in person in the fall of 2021. Until then, stay tuned to all of our activity, and thank you for joining us, and stay safe. Thank you and have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.